There's a phrase in English, which I'm going to use in this interview. It's called bringing coals to Newcastle, which of course means bringing something that the people there don't really need. I have a guy here who's come in, flown in. He's got a bit of a nerve, or the Jews would say chutzpah. He's come in from Detroit, and he's going to educate, or try to educate Silicon Valley about innovation. Bringing coals to Newcastle. Gary Shapiro, the author of Ninja Innovation and the CEO and president of CEA. Gary, welcome to TechCrunch TV.
Andrew, until this moment, it's been a pleasure to be here.
Gary, you and I have known each other a long time. This is the first time that you have deigned to come on my show. And you're in town at the moment promoting this new book. It's a bestseller, Ninja Innovation. But you're from Detroit. You've got a bit of a nerve, a bit of chutzpah coming out here and educating us and telling us about innovation. What do you in Detroit know about innovation?
Well, actually, I also live and work in Washington,
Well, even more. That's even less innovative than Detroit.
Well, the truth is, as innovative as Silicon Valley is, and it's phenomenal, it's the world standard. There are pockets of innovation around the country and indeed around the world. And having spoken before different groups in Nashville and Seattle, in Virginia, in Maryland, in Austin, and elsewhere, innovation's occurring all over. And actually, given how the computer and broadband allows anyone in the world to create an international business with very little investment, with Silicon Valley, and indeed what the U.S. has had in a monopoly on innovation for the most part, is in jeopardy.
Well, before Gary, we come on to what you can tell us about innovation in Silicon Valley. Ninja Innovation, you brought one of your ninjas in here. What is the book about? What are you arguing?
Well, I'm arguing that having spent 30 years dealing with the most innovative companies and people, CEOs in the world, and getting to know them, I say, here are the things that I have observed, and this is what it takes to be a ninja innovator. And a ninja innovator is someone who's flexible, fast. They build up a great team. They know what they're doing. They challenge the status quo, and they go to where the future is, and they create the future. They're not just followers. They're not just sitting along with the status quo and copying others. And that's what it takes to be, whether it was Amazon or even IBM or Apple or others. They're people who are defining the world we will live in.
We got an audience, Gary, of entrepreneurs, of startup people who want to become ninja innovators. What advice would you give?
Well, first you have to know what your goal is and define it, and what is it you're passionate about.
Well, we all know that. Everyone wants to be rich out here.
Well, if you're doing to be rich, forget about it, because you can't inspire people just saying you want to be rich and this. You have to have something which motivates beyond money. You have to be changing the world somehow. Certainly, if you talk about the companies that I focus on, it's just not about money. Otherwise, those founders like a Jeff Bezos or Steve Jobs would have gotten out and sold their companies and moved on with their lives. They've stayed there because they're passionate about the change they're bringing. Second is you have to have a team, and that team has to complement you, not be clones of you. You have to be honest with yourself and know your weaknesses, because every great innovator, from Thomas Edison to Bill Gates to Steve Jobs, they were not solo entrepreneurs. They had huge teams behind them of people that were very different than they were. And that's one of the great strengths of America, is that we are hugely diverse here, and you can get a diverse team, and that leads to innovation. And of course, you have to be goal-oriented, you have to focus, you have to be clever, and you have to change your path and learn from your mistakes, because every entrepreneur is going to make mistakes and change the business plan along the way. Once you hit the customer with your idea, which preferably should be early on in the process, you're going to get feedback and change what you're doing.
Gary, what do you think? You're quite familiar with Silicon Valley. Your day job is running the Consumer Electronics Association. In which areas of innovation can Silicon Valley entrepreneurs learn from the rest of America?
Well, Silicon Valley is the world standard that everyone wants to be like. We've seen that in Europe when I was there with you, when we saw the Vice Chairman of the European Union giving awards out to those so they could be like Americans, be entrepreneurial. Silicon Valley does attract the best and the brightest from around the world. It's where you could find people. But what Silicon Valley can learn is, number one, when you are number one, there's a tendency towards arrogance.
Arrogance? Silicon Valley? You saying that Silicon Valley is arrogant, Gary Shapiro?
I said when you are number one in anything,
So
whether
we're
it's trade
arrogant out
shows,
here?
whether it's a trade show as the international
you're
CES
arrogant
number,
too?
it's the danger you face. It's what I loved about Andy Grove of Intel. It says be paranoid when you're number one, because it's not a God-given
But are you seeing
destiny.
arrogance out here? Seriously?
What I see is risk, in the sense that there is a certain feeling this is the only place in the world it can happen, but it can happen anywhere. The second thing is
Really?
the expense of Silicon Valley, hiring people, real estate is getting so it's making it less competitive. And the third is the system of laws in California, which have caused the loss of 1 million jobs due to high taxes and discouraging business. You put those three things together, and it's not a sure shot that Silicon Valley will be preeminent in 20 or 30 years, and that's okay.
Are you seeing that here? Are you talking to CEOs who are worried about Silicon Valley's position?
Well, I talk to CEOs and moved out of California because they're concerned about the business environment and the cost of getting employees and the cost of what it costs for the employees. And I realized that the benefits that you used to have in terms of a location and being near Stanford and things like that, well, there's a great, Boston has a lot of good universities, and there's a great...
Does Detroit?
Detroit certainly has things they're good at. They have phenomenally highly skilled manufacturing that's underused now, but it's coming back very quickly. I think there's a renaissance around different places in the U.S., including in manufacturing. So there's opportunity there. And the point is that at any time you're number one in anything, the tendency is towards complacency, and that's the biggest danger. And it's a competitive world out there. The rest of the world has figured out what the U.S. does right. Other cities in the U.S. have looked at Silicon Valley. They're not doing the same thing. They have other expertise, whether it's biotech or automobiles or things like that.
What are you most impressed with in America outside Silicon Valley? Which center of innovation? Is it Boston, Austin?
Oh, Austin's hot. Boston's hot. New York is really hot. People want to come to New York.
Where's that?
New York has a tech boom that's flourishing in leaps and bounds because people want to be in New York. They see it coming back. They like living there. It's exciting. And New York has its own little Silicon Valley there. Virginia has 1/3 of the internet traffic. It's a phenomenal place to do business. Charlotte, North Carolina is a great place. They have a lot going on with the Research Triangle. And a lot of these places, what they have in common, they have great universities. They have a great place to live, a living environment that people want. And they attract there's an interaction going on, and I see it when there's literally hundreds of companies around a technology ecosystem, an innovation ecosystem, whether it's in a specific area, biotech or something else, it works.
So, as I said, Gary, your day job is the head of the Consumer Electronics Association. Now, perhaps it's time for you to put your crash helmet on, but some people might say that trade association is by definition very conservative, and they might say, well, in running such a large trade organization, what does that teach you about innovation? Because organizations like the CEA, I almost said CIA, are by definition against innovation.
Well, we're not, but we are the opposite. Our whole focus is on the innovation movement, on making America the most innovative place in the world through a combination of trade, immigration, spectrum, and patent policy. That's what we're focusing on. That's what we argue for in Congress. And
What's your position on spectrum?
Spectrum is we need it. We need it for our smartphones and our tablets. They consume a lot of spectrum, and there's a coming crunch, and we're anticipating it. We're focusing on the future.
So you believe on the spectrum side, you believe in an open public auction?
We believe
not
the
excluding large companies.
Oh, the bigger the auction, the better the results for everyone. We want to make sure that it's available for use. We also, and I want to step back, 80% of our members are small businesses, and we're out there not only fighting for the startups, we're fighting for companies like Uber, which allows a car service. We are always out there fighting against the status quo, because the status quo in their work in Washington or other legislatures and political bodies is what stymies innovation. Everyone's trying to protect what they have. We represent the industry, frankly, which is always pushing against something existing, someone else's rice bowl, someone's monopoly. And that's what we're always fighting for.
So you're disruptors by definition at the CEA?
I think that's the attitude of our leadership and our staff, that we want to make sure that the world is free for legal disruption.
Well, Gary, you've got about a minute and a half now to tell our worldwide audience of startup entrepreneurs why they should come to CES in January of next year. What's going to be so disruptive and innovative about CES 2014?
Well, anyone who actually goes to CES and walks the floor, as they have and they tell us, according to our surveys, that 98% of them want to come back because it's inspiring, because it's the World's Fair of Innovation, because we even have now a separate thing just for startups of over 150 companies in partnership with Startup America and the National Science Foundation. We have all sorts of over 20 different categories of what we call tech zones, which are new categories of product, whether it be robotics or sensing devices or something, or wireless health. And we have, even the automobile industry is now, 80% of the major car companies are now at CES exhibiting, because technology and innovation is centering now in the CES environment on a worldwide basis. And that's how we get over 150,000 tech people, and it's a broad definition, coming to see what's hot and what's next.
Well, the guy from Detroit has come to Silicon Valley and given us a lecture about innovation. He's certainly got a lot of chutzpah. He's a smart guy, and he's written an excellent book, Ninja Innovation. You should all read it. Gary Shapiro, a real pleasure and honor to have you on TechCrunch TV, and I hope you'll be back again very soon to give us another lecture on innovation.